On March 15th, 2019, New Zealand experienced what Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern described as one of the country's darkest days, when two mosques in Christchurch were the targets of a terror attack. 28-year-old white supremacist Brenton Tarrant gunned down 51 people, injuring 49 others during Friday prayer. It was the first mass shooting the country had seen in 22 years. And prior to this tragedy, New Zealand was named the second most peaceful country in the world. Since Monday, 4 days of hearings have been held leading up to the sentencing. And in a New Zealand first, Brenton Tarrant has been sentenced to life without parole. Here to talk to us about it is crime expert and serial killer whisperer, Amanda Howard. Amanda, welcome to the Ben, Rob and Robbo Show.
Hi, guys. I sit here every day waiting to come on the show, and finally you let me come on.
Well, Amanda is my podcast partner. We do a true crime podcast called Monsters Who Murder, Serial Killer Confessions. Download it now in your favourite podcast feed. But Amanda, this sentencing is actually a huge deal for New Zealand. They have never sentenced anyone to life without parole before. Why do you think they made the choice to do this and be so different?
Well, the first thing that a lot of people won't know is that life without parole was actually only introduced to New Zealand only 10 years ago. So right. Before that, the most they could do was life plus 10 years for each life. They don't do, the 15 life sentences like the US does. So it is only 10 years. And there has been 3 people that have been sentenced since that time, but none of them have taken on this life without parole because it's about the worst case scenario, and this is unfortunately one of the world's worst case scenarios.
So Amanda, the previous longest without parole was 30 years. What did that person do to get convicted of that?
Well, he actually, his name's William Bell, and he actually killed 3 people and tried to kill a 4th during a bank robbery at an RSL sort of place. So he was given the 30 years, which is the maximum sentence before he's allowed to apply for parole. Even if this hadn't been without parole, you still have to get parole once you're actually up for it. So a lot of these people will go a year on year on year, sometimes 5 years at a time, just to see if they can actually get parole, and they usually don't.
Sure.
Yeah, right. Well, Amanda, do you think that this historical decision will change the future of sentencing in New Zealand moving forward?
I think it will. I mean, what we have now is a yardstick, basically. So this is going to be the crime that they will compare every other case to in the country. God forbid anything even remotely close comes to this. But what you will see is that if someone has killed several people, they'll say, is that in the same category as this case? Or is it, a less category? And so we will say that they will get life, but they can't apply for parole for maybe 40 years.
Amanda, this sentencing comes with a guilty plea, but initially he pleaded not guilty to these charges. When there is video evidence, you and I have both seen the evidence, Robbo has seen it, there's no doubt in anyone's minds that he committed this offence. Why do criminals bother pleading not guilty?
Oh, well, this is actually a part of the legal system, because if you plead guilty up front, that's it. The case is over. You go straight to sentencing. By pleading not guilty to begin with, it gives them time to put the case together. It gives time to research, gives time to talk to witnesses and all of that. So they may find something like a mental health issue or anything like that may come up. So they need to do this first plea because they have to put in a plea. So most of them do the not guilty to begin with, and some go through it completely and go through the trial and still get found guilty. Even if there is footage, they can say that they were under influence of drugs, mental health issues, under duress and things like this. So it will always start there. And then obviously in cases like this, thank goodness for the victims involved, he did plead guilty at the end.
Well, look, over these hearings, we've seen a lot of victims and victims' families want to have their say and confront Brenton Tarrant. 53 people from around the world have travelled to New Zealand. Why is this such an important part of the court proceedings?
Well, what this is it puts those impact statements onto the public record. So what happens there is that these people are able to continue to live their lives and know that they've spoken and their voice will be heard regardless of how many times someone may come up for parole. That emotion remains. And so if in 60 years' time he's an 80-year-old man and wants to get out of jail, the judge at the time, the parole hearing at the time, can read those statements again and say, no, there is too much pain here, there is too much hurt, and they cannot go forward with it.
So, Amanda, can you take us through what these hearings have, what we've learnt from these hearings and by what we've heard from listening to the victims?
It's been so heartbreaking to hear, and if you think back to the footage of those that have seen it, some of these victims who survived and were shot several times by the perpetrator, what they were able to do was lie there, pretend they were dead, and be shot over and over again. And it's those statements. I mean, I've got chills just even thinking about it. And they stood up and spoke and saying, "I had to pretend to be dead to escape," and it is just so heartbreaking to see that this is what has happened. And some of them, there was a father and son who went to pray because their little grandson was actually in hospital and was very, very ill. They went to pray for help, and their lives were changed. They never came home. They never were able to hold that baby again. And there's just all of these people who were just going about their daily life, and the woman that was out the front, I can still hear her voice, and her family has seen this footage, and her family has had to live with this pain, and this pain is a bloodstain across New Zealand's history forever. And I think it's even worse to know that it's an Australian that perpetrated this, because we feel that New Zealand's our sibling, and to have one of ours hurt theirs, it's just horrific.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think will stick with people is we saw a really powerful moment with one of the victims who was hit by a bullet in the neck. We have some footage of that. Check it out.
I did not see any rumors, any regrets, any shame in the eyes of this terrorist. And he does not regret anything. So I decided not to read my impact statement to show him that how much I suffer. Instead, I will show him that, thank you very much, that in this whole time, 17 years since I was living in New Zealand, and I was working, some of the people were calling me, because I was from Afghanistan, they were calling me as a fan or joke or intentionally a terrorist. But you took that name from me. Today you are called terrorist, and you proved that to the world that I was not, and us as a Muslim were not terrorists. I say to the people of New Zealand that Thank you. I say to the people of New Zealand that terrorists do not have religion, race, and color. Any color, any race, and any face could be a terrorist. And we are not terrorists. We have suffered, but we are strong. My brothers and sisters suffered, but we are stronger than before. I was living this country after the attack, but you proved it, and you want me now to stay in this country forever. I will not leave this country, and this is my country, and this is my home. I came as a refugee to this country, and I will be not going from this country anywhere. So you are the loser, and we are the winners.
Wow. I tell you what, Amanda, I mean, it's a pretty powerful speech, and I actually think in some ways it probably has changed, the way in which people attribute terrorism. I think very unfairly people have attributed certain races and religions. What are your thoughts? Do you think that this has maybe changed the face of terrorism?
I think we always expected to have a big part of that September 11 effect that we've had, and the Islamophobia and things like that, that this actually proves the antithesis of that anyone can be a terrorist, that it doesn't have a race, it doesn't have a religion, as that witness just said. This is about that anyone with such strong beliefs can actually go and perpetrate something like this as a terrorist attack, and that we are calling him a terrorist, that is exactly what he is.
Amanda, I want to ask your opinion. One of the issues we brought up at the very top of the show was this idea about whether people like him should be named. What are your thoughts when it comes to the naming of a killer like this?
I mean, there's two different trains of thought for this, but for me, I think we need to name them because we don't want to forget that history. We don't want to realize that people can do these sorts of things, and it's heinous. If we forget the name of Hitler, does that mean that it takes away that pain? It doesn't. So by using his name as a reference of hate, I think that has a powerful message that we can share, that we're not all like this, but there are people out there like this that can create such horrible horrible events that, you know, that they go on live stream, you know, that is why he did that. He wanted to have his name out there. He put his face smack bang in the middle of the camera, so we all knew who he was. But we can't hide away from this person's name, because if we do, then we start to forget, and then the victims lose their name as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Amanda Howard, thank you very much. You are my podcast partner, and I greatly respect you. You can hear more of Amanda at Monsters Who Murder, Serial Killer Confessions. She is the serial killer whisperer, full of fascinating information. Amanda, we really appreciate you coming on the Ben Robin Robbo Show. Thanks for finally stopping by.
Thank you. I hope to be here again.
Well, I hope so too. Thanks, Amanda. We'll talk soon.
Thanks.
All right.
It's the Ben Robin Robbo Show.